peace, and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural divine heirs. Today is September 23rd, 1442 on the ancient moon calendar, 1441 on the ancient sun calendar, and 2021 on the Greco-Roman calendar. All rise and stand. This is a sovereign, ancient, living, Article 3, Al-Moroccan, Moorish American, court action. I am sovereign living justice, calling Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. My free chosen sovereign appellation is light fiduciarie, in capitis diminutio nolo, in red ink, in proprio persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. No United States corporation, company, citizen, nor their agents, principals, heirs, assigned, nor any derivatives thereof has personam jurisdiction over me nor over any more. Our full faith, trust, allegiance, credit, and everything and energy is hereby vested in each other, our nation, our government, and our state. So yesterday we began talking about the fiduciary, the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine fiduciary. The fiduciary for us, yesterday we defined what a fiduciary is, and just in a nutshell, we will go briefly over just a couple of points from yesterday so that we can pick back up where we left off. Yes, a fiduciary is a trustee. A fiduciary is not a sovereign, original, indigenous fiduciary. It does not represent anyone, okay, because no one represents the Moors. And we'll go into that a little further, but we did define what a representative is, and we know that we're not representatives of anything or anyone. We are the original living being of all that there is. And so the sovereign fiduciary does everything through the conveyance method of their state, of statehood. And that's why fiduciaries have the responsibilities that they have. And we will list just a couple of those responsibilities here shortly. So this is part 2 of the fiduciary duties and responsibilities of the sovereign state, okay? And today we're going to decapitate fear. And that fear has everything to do with black ink, because we know we don't use black ink because we're not black. Black means pale. And so we want to make sure today that we clarify some of the things that we said yesterday. We want to add more clarity to them so that there's no mistaking what we're really doing, okay? A quick review from yesterday. All Moors are fiduciaries of their own vast estate. Over the years, you know, we've been looking at, people have mentioned, you know, the prophet has a trust and the Moors have a trust, and we've been looking around like, who's the trustees of this vast estate trust? Well, it's all Moors. We're all the fiduciaries and trustees and beneficiaries. We're the executors, ministers, claimants, heirs of our own vast estate. So all Moors are fiduciaries, just like all Moors are justices and consuls, and all Moors have the same supreme sovereign authority by bloodline and birthright. So in order to begin or continue doing our fiduciary duties, we want to be sure that it's clear how that foundation is set. The foundation for fiduciary duties and responsibilities of we, the sovereign state, is that we have the name, change, and judicial proclamation on the public record in red and all lowercase letters, because that is the land jurisdiction. Red ink and all lowercase letters is the sovereign land jurisdiction for the heirs. Number two, we want to have a termination of all corporate contracts issued in black ink and capital letters to include all agents, principals, heirs, assigns, and any and all derivatives thereof. Okay? And corporate contracts is anything issued by that black United States corporation company that has been, detaining Moors, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we terminate all presumed corporate contracts, because in reality, jurisdiction cannot be waived even by consent of both parties. Number three, place a sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, de jure, Moorish National Republic Federal Government Trust Proclamation on the public record. And that is a simple one-page document that says that you have a trust. And that original, indigenous, natural, divine trust is an express trust written by you and controlled by you. Number four, place a sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, de jure, Universal Commercial Code 1 affidavit, because we speak by affidavit. So when we do our liens, we do them by affidavit. And we are liening the black ink debtor in capital letters. Okay? And on the screen, you will see how that is expressed. These are I call them the dead clauses, these right here, the brackets. They're essentially putting something into a casket. That's what they represent. And so whenever we're talking about black debtors and black ink, okay, we have to first know for sure what the word black means. Black means pale, and it means dead at law. So we don't use black anything in terms of the ink and everything on our document. So and then we also, when we're liening, we lien, for example, we'll lien the nom de guerre war name in capitis diminutio minima. That's with the first letter capitalized and the rest of the letters lowercase. Doing business as the all caps nom de guerre war name. And then you put an all agents, principals, heirs, assigns, and any and all derivatives thereof. So let's make a clarification here, because I looked back at the video yesterday and I do need to make this clarification about the all lowercase black ink entity that the other two were created from. Okay, so the black ink, and here on the screen I use Pauline Denise Ritchie doing business. That's Pauline Denise Ritchie as an example. And then Pauline Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio nolo, which is in all lowercase letters. This entity and the other two that were created from it were created, all three of them were created by the corporation. This entity in all lowercase letters is the principal to this entity with the first letter capitalized, and this entity with all capital letters. Therefore, if it's made by the corpses, then all of that went to jail, and all of that goes to the guillotine. In other words, decapitation. And decapitation for us means removal from office. Those things under the United States Corporation Company, those instruments were used as war instruments against us. Okay? And they put an overlay over all of our sovereign resources using those instruments. And that's why we have to lean those instruments off of our sovereign estate and then begin using our estate as we should. So, again, even the Pauline, Denise, Richie, and all lowercase letters in those death brackets right there, in black ink, according to the way that the corporates and corpses have defined black, and in accordance with the true definition of black, even that one is not something that we use. But we're going to nationalize, okay, because that's what we're doing. We're nationalizing everything that we use. All of our tools, all of our instruments, all of our property, everything is being nationalized so that we can use it, okay? So now, again, this one that was created by the corpses, all of this that was created by the corpses I already did a court action, I already did a lien, and they're gone to Guantanamo Bay and they were decapitated. That means removed from office, okay? So now, number 5 did an original indigenous consular court action on that same non-de-jure, so we talked about that. So now, let's talk about some of the duties of a sovereign lawful fiduciary, okay? Some of the duties of a sovereign original indigenous lawful fiduciary is we speak lawfully in court regardless of the cause for appearance. And when I say regardless of the cause for appearance, we speak as the beneficiaries, the heirs, the trustees. We are all of that. And in any court that we go in, we are automatically the justice if it is an inferior court. Automatically, we are the law in all inferior courts. Even as fiduciaries, no matter what hat we're wearing in terms of the things that we're doing, we are the justice. Now, what else does fiduciaries do? They govern financial affairs. And here's one thing we know for sure about governing financial affairs. We can govern financial affairs when everything and everyone is in their proper status and we have complete control of the finances. And how do we have control of the finances? First of all, we have our own finances. We create and print our own money. That's number 1, and we've done that, and we'll continue to do that. Number 2, what we do is any other currencies that are running around on our land, we have control over those too. We just keep it lawful with all that we do, and everything else becomes a resource on our land, okay? But it must be properly named by us, and proper documentation for it must be on the public record. That is how we govern everything on our land. We speak by affidavit. And then number 3, fiduciaries govern estates in the best interest of the beneficiaries. We first must do that for ourselves before we can do it for anyone else. Okay? So I'm the fiduciary for my vast estate first. So that's the first fiduciary duty and responsibility that I'm having to do. And I get my best experience by doing that, by doing my fiduciary duties that way. All of the duties of a sovereign fiduciary for a de jure original indigenous state are done by government affidavit and by court action. All court actions start with proper identification of the parties. Status is the order of the day at court. Nationality is the order of the day at court. That means status means state. Statehood is the optimum conveyance method by which status is put forth. Yes, we put it forth individually, sui generis, because we have that authority. We've been doing that. And then when we want to add more status to it, let me put it that way if that's possible, because we're bringing our whole state with us. When we convey anything that we're conveying by using fiduciary duties and using our statehood as a conveyance method, okay? So if we remember, when we would go into those state courts, they generally would have something that says the state of whatever versus, and then they'd have the name of their court, okay? We're looking at that example, and this is another place where statehood is going to be very important for us, because we can actually say the de jure Moorish National Republic federal government state versus anyone who is violating. And we're going to continue looking at the best ways to use our statehood in order to gain remedy and to keep the peace on the land. Okay? So you can imagine how powerful that is in terms of being able to call forth the whole state that is Moors, that's sovereign, and using that conveyance method to speak internationally. That is one of the importances of one of the main important energies where statehood is concerned. And the fiduciary can bring statehood to each and every action and court action that we do. Okay? So I wanted to add some clarification about this lowercase, the difference between a lowercase black entity and the instrument that we would use, okay? And I put this in bigger writing because I wanted it to be really clear that we're not using anything corporate, okay? So clarification from yesterday's General Assembly. Corporations can only make dead things in black ink. So we have liened the court. We also liened all of its agents, principals, heirs, assigns, and any and all derivatives thereof. All of it, including the in capitis diminutio nolo in black ink entity, all of it was decapitated to include the all lowercase black name that was made by the corporation. Therefore, we do not have to worry about using anything made by a corpse when we ourselves proclaim our true identity. We terminate all presumed corporate contracts. We each do a consular court action and lien affidavit on all things corporate. And again, the lien affidavit can be crafted as a court action, and it actually should be. We are encouraged to do each and every affidavit and started with our court action language, okay? So now, having said that about the black ink, we, the principal state, law, government, and nation, determine the nature and how we proceed in terms of the statehood, okay? So how do we proceed to move forward with full possession of our vast estate? First, we call our creation forth by the proper sovereign appellation. So first, we properly identify the ink that we are using for our lawful creations, because we talk about red ink all the time, okay? But then we know that we can use any of the other inks. We just have to call it what it really is. We're not using anything corporate. We're going to call it what it is and call it forth properly, just like we did for ourselves. We're nationalizing everything and everyone that we use, so that nothing that we use is foreign to us. Because that is actually one of the general resolutions in the United Nations documents, where it says that sovereigns do not use anything that's foreign to them. So on the record, for the record, and letting the record show that the ink that these letters are displayed in right here is not black, okay? And we put this out on social media, and we put it out through some of the text groups and things like that earlier today. Because black means dead at law and pale. And we, the sovereign state, script these letters in what we call monochrome, meaning without color and not colored, okay? So it looks like black, just like they thought we were looking like blacks. But we're not black, and neither is the ink that we use, okay? But we must state it on the public record what it is. No instruments created by the de jure people shall be construed as having any meaning that the creators do not intend, regardless of the tone, style, spell, size, or any other characteristics. We speak by affidavit. So what we're doing is we have decapitated and done away with black ink, because that is not even what that really is. Just like we were improperly and unlawfully identified, so was the ink. It's not black, it's monochrome. And monochrome is spelled the way we choose to spell it. Ma means mother. No means no. And chrome means color. Mother without color. We're not colored people. And so monochrome is the color of this ink. So now what do we do with that? I'm sure that it's in some of your spirits, you can already see where we're going with this. So what does the law say about our authority to nationalize and name letters, ink, spelling, and color? And again, we're not bouncing anything off of the corporate. We've done away with that by lien. Just like our conveyances. Our conveyances are still the same conveyances. It's just that we put the right documentation and we called it what it really is. Okay? We're doing the same thing for the naming of the letters, the ink, the spelling, the color, or lack of color, or no color. Okay? So what does the law say about our authority to do this? Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution for the United States, 1789-1791, states that this Constitution, Article 6, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law for the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state To the contrary, notwithstanding. What does that mean? That means that when we call that ink monochrome in our state, that means that it is the supreme law for us, and then we make it the law under, we put that law under all of the other states. Okay? We're not under any state, we're not under any paper, any affidavits, any document, we're not under any treaty. What we do is we speak and we put things in its proper place. So what are we saying? We're saying that any other state that sees ink that's that color shall not call it black. It is monochrome when it's on our document. So we speak by affidavit. So when they see it on our document, then it is monochrome. That's why we don't fill out their forms. Because on their forms in their corporate state, it means what they say it means. But in our sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, natural, divine state, it means what we say it means. It is monochrome. Okay? So, Article 8 of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People states that indigenous people and individuals have the right not to be subjected to forced assimilation or destruction of their culture. What does that mean? That means that when our documents are, when there's some conflict on the land and we're in our sovereign consular court, and let me say this, no matter what court we go in, it becomes consular and it becomes Article 3 the moment we set foot in it. That we're not going to be forced to assimilate to that court or that state, whatever it is they're doing there. They must go by our sovereign rules and laws when it comes to us, because that's what sovereign state is all about. And then we know that the original indigenous courts are the highest courts on the land, the Article 3 courts that we Moors are, because we are the court, we are the law, we are the government. It is the highest court. And so there cannot be any forced assimilation. What does that mean? That means that any place that we go, we are ourselves, and we're not forced to be citizens by anyone else's paperwork. So we have to not fill out their paperwork. But always let our documents, our sovereign affidavits precede us in red and all lowercase letters. And then if there is a part of that where we're using an instrument that is monochrome, because we're not monochrome, the instrument is monochrome, then we will note that on our document. This is going to be important as we move forward, because there's some things that we get to do in properly identifying ourselves and our instruments that we use. And that's why our affidavits are so important. Number 2, state shall provide effective mechanisms for prevention of and redress for any action which has the aim or effect of depriving them of their integrity as distinct people or of their cultural values or ethnic identities. Okay, what does that mean? Are we a distinct people? Or do we look like them? Do our documents look like them? Does our language look like theirs? No. Does our money look like theirs? No. So when we're going into any other place, our money goes with us. It is distinct, and we shall not be moved into other places and forced to assimilate by using some other form of fiat that doesn't have our nature. That's what this is saying. It's talking about money too. Any action. And that means An action can be if they just assume that, oh, I saw that and I just assumed it was this. No, that's an action that could potentially attempt to deprive of us of our distinction. We have a distinct language. Ancient English is distinct because we can pull from wherever we choose in our spirits or on our estates where our language is concerned. We're not limited by anything. There are no boundaries with our language. If we want to speak, bring some other languages in and spell them the way we want to spell them, then that's what we do. And we assign our own meaning to them. That's what we can do because this is our state. And no one can interfere in that. So, B, 2B says, any action which has the aim or effect of dispossessing them of their lands, territories, or resources. Well, if you misidentify us, now it's one thing to misidentify us because we didn't properly identify ourselves. That's one thing. And more, we've seen that. But we're competent. We've properly identified ourselves on the public record. Therefore, any action to include thinking or assuming in an effort to dispossess us of our lands. And again, we're the heirs to all land here. All territory and all natural resources. So whenever there's violation and you bring the state with you, the state versus, and then you name whoever it is, whatever is going on there. That's the power of statehood. Now, do we throw statehood around aimlessly? No, we don't. We're competent not to do that. We're peaceful. Our state is not a war state. It's a peace state. It's a peace state. So, C, 2C here on the screen. Any form of forced population transfer which has the aim or effect of violating or undermining any of their rights. What is forced population transfer? The Trail of Tears was not where a bunch of us marched all the way across the land somewhere. That's not what that really means. Now, there are times when things like that happen, but population transfer can happen first on paper. It has to happen first on paper because they have to get our consent to do it. And that's what that black ink piece was all about. Black being dead at law by their definition. And because we did not properly rebut that and then put something in its place that is lawful, it happened. However, once again, jurisdiction cannot be waived even by consent of both parties. So yes, nunc pro tunc on the monochrome ink. And that goes for bank accounts, real estate transactions, anything that has happened previously, tickets, whatever. Listen, that ink that they used was black. That's not the ink we use. We use monochrome ink. It might look the same just like we look like black. But we're not black. And if you ask me, we don't look like black because black means pale. So no, we don't even look like black. So any form of forced population transfer, that's when someone goes into a system and they take all the people who have a B by their name. First of all, they have a name, and then they're in that system under the B word, which is black, and they take all of them and they move them over and say all of these have warrants, so go out and get them all. when we're all Moors. That's forced population transfer without our consent. And we never consent to population transfer. We never have and never will. And we spell population with an E so that it means what we say it means. And then 2D, any form of forced assimilation or integration. If we don't want to be integrated into someone's society, we don't have to be. I repeat, if we don't want to be integrated into someone's society, we don't have to be. And because it's a spell, I'll say it one more time, with love and peace and truth and freedom. If we do not want to be integrated into someone's society, we don't have to be. Because we have our own. Will we be kind or nice? Not nice, but will we be diplomatic, cordial, and loving? Yes, we will be. But that does not mean we want to be integrated into someone else's society legally. And I'm putting that in air quotes, legally. No, we don't. Because there's protection in our own sovereign state. So people have been talking about, where is the protection? The Moors need protection. Well, we have it. And there's a little bit of sun coming in my window here. So, you know, everything that has happened in the past, all that we're talking about right now is retroactive. Okay? It's retroactive. So, if there are, let's see, I am going to open the chat, and if there are any questions, we will assist one another with any questions that we have about what's been said so far. And really quickly, let me say this about the monochrome ink. What does that mean? That means that, and I'll put it on the screen here. That means that in our documents, when we talk about things like bank accounts, for example, we put it on our affidavit, okay, because we're talking about anything that's happened either in the past or now when we look at black ink. Because, see, when we bring it into our jurisdiction, we govern it. And then we get to say, nope, that's not, we're not dealing with that. That's fraud. We're not dealing with this. We're not dealing with that. So now, when, let me see, I need to be able to see this. Now we have created a monochrome This is our brand new creation. And we're going to specify this on each and every document. Okay? that a little smaller. Okay. So now this is, and it's not in those brackets. Remember the casket brackets, the death brackets? So how do we distinguish between the two? Whenever, if I were to write that and say, this is not me, I'm going to put, this is how I would note that. Okay? But then what is me? Or not what is me? Who is the instrument that I'm using? Because see, even our appellations are not us, we're us. Appellations are an instrument that we use lawfully and sovereignly, that we choose and we just use it freely among one another. This is who I am, okay, because I have created it and I've named it. Does it look the same? Sort of. But that is where the fraud actually took place, is they created something that looked similar, but it was not us. And then they called it, and because they created it, they were able to call it what they wanted to call it. So because we're creating, because see, we've already done away with theirs. That's why the court action and liens are so important. And now we're saying that this is, and we qualify it every time we say it and use it, but we qualify it anyway. Pauline Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio nullo, in red ink, in monochrome ink, in propria persona sui juris, in propria soli, in propria heredis. So if I was talking to someone at a bank and they're looking at their screen, then I will say, so what you have there is Pauline Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio nullo, in monochrome ink, in propria persona sui juris, in propria soli, in propria heredis. Is that correct? And like clockwork, they always say, yeah, that's what I have. That's what I have. And some will say, well, I don't understand that. Well, don't worry about that. I am Pauline Denise Ritchie in capitis diminutio nullo, in monochrome ink, in propria persona sui juris, in propria soli, in propria heredis. And that is how you deal with those entities. And when they hear all of that, they are already going to know that they're talking to the sovereign, because we're the only ones. It's distinct with us. We distinguish ourselves by being ourselves. That's how they know it's us. Because no one else, like when we were in citizens, thinking we were citizens, we didn't qualify our appellation at all. They would just say, is this Pauline Ritchie? And we would say, yeah, that's me. And that was not even us. They weren't even talking to us. That was their creation, their corporate fiction. Okay? So just like we have nationalized our conveyances by giving it our nature, and nationalized ourselves because we are the sovereign heirs, and nationalize all of our sovereign resources, we're going to continue doing that and calling it what it really is. Okay? So, here, let me, I'll go ahead and open the chat, and if there are any questions, we will take them from the heirs at this time. There's some super bright sun coming in in the window. Okay, I don't see any questions. I don't see any questions just yet in the chat, and that's fine. So again, clarification: when we lien and do court actions on anything corporate, because see, what's really happening is now we're the state, and we've always been the state. But everything that they were attempting to control by fraud and semantic deceit, we do away with it, and then we put something in its place that is sovereign, original, indigenous, ancient, natural, and divine. So that when we speak, that which we put in place, it's clear that it comes from us and that it means what we intend for it to mean. And no one is to violate that. That's what statehood is all about. Islam, thank you, the inbox that I'm getting. Yes, Justice Yezreel, this comes back to jurisdiction and the tone of the speaker. We qualify, yes, Justice Shakur, we qualify that. Justice J. Michael, that's a great question. So he asked, what is the purpose of using monochrome when we're using red? That's a great question. So let me put it this way. If I were writing a bank document and wanting them to open a bank account, in my sovereign status, of course, because we would never do it any other way, and then we have our duarium or our liens or whatever, then I would do the document the way we always start our documents. If you look on the screen up at the top, we do everything introducing ourselves. We do it in red because the Savior speaks in red. That's the land jurisdiction. So we're always going to start out land jurisdiction. And then for their purposes, for the bank's purposes, it's not a foreign entity that we're dealing with, so we won't be putting anything into any quote-unquote foreign bank. What's foreign on our own land? It's still ours. So what we'll do is when we're talking about the account, the fiduciary will note the account in monochrome ink. So the account will be noted like, here, I'm going to remove this right here. The account will be noted like this. Let's see. So the account, again, we're starting everything out in red because it has to be, we have to have it on the land jurisdiction first, okay? And then for accounting purposes, they'll say, well, what is the account? So we would say the account appellation is, or we could even say, because again, monochrome, and on our appellation, of course, we would put in capitis diminutio minima in monochrome ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredis. I mean, I would feel more comfortable putting it this way, and again, in our nation, if we feel comfortable keeping everything in capitis diminutio nolo, we can do that. And everyone else is, you know, the subjects will do their workaround. They can do their workaround, but as long as it does not violate or force assimilation or anything like that, okay? And then, you know, they can put the account number. So that when the mailings come to the mailing location, everything will be so that we can properly rebut what we see, because guess what? We will have spoken in our own sovereign jurisdiction. We will have kept everything in our own sovereign jurisdiction, so that no matter what the mailing looks like, we can put those affidavits right back out there and speak the way we need to speak, so that we're not forced, there's no forced assimilation. Okay, that's a great question. We start out in the land jurisdiction, okay? And then we stay in the land jurisdiction, but then now we're using an instrument. So the monochrome ink is an instrument that we're using, okay? Why is that too? It's because red, the system that is being used, yes, that system is a land system when we speak to it properly, okay? But the instruments and the conveyance methods, it may, you know, the conveyance methods have a distinct they have a distinct characteristic that means it doesn't need to be in red. Okay, and they've been putting things in black, in quote unquote black, but we have to make sure that they know that that's not black. That when they're speaking to us and we're speaking to them, that the instruments that we're using are monochrome. We're not monochrome, but the instrument is, because we say it is. And we kind of are monochrome, if you think about it, because monochrome actually makes reference to light, and how, like, if you even look up the word color, they've been using that wrong too. But they put the word color in capital letters too. The word color is the sensation that your eye uses to interpret frequencies. So it doesn't even mean crayon colors. That's why black means pale. Because it's, you look up the word color and do the etymology on it, because it's an interesting word. It actually refers to the way that the eye responds to the frequency that it's receiving. And we can call those frequencies whatever we want to call them. That's what we're doing. The frequencies, we can call them whatever we want to call them. We choose to call the frequency monochrome, because that is actually what it really is. And then on each and every document where I'm using monochrome ink, I'm going to put on the document a description, just like we describe who we are. And we don't really describe it, we state who we are, because describe indicates adjectives. When we're not adjectives, we're nouns. So the monochrome is an instrument. That's the purpose of using it, is to distinguish the instrument from the heir, from the sovereign. Does that help, just to say? It distinguishes us from the instrument that we're using. My chat is moving a little slow, but it's all good. Okay. Are there any other questions, comments at all with regard to what we just talked about? And I'm going to put it in If you have any questions, you can start six, but of course we're only talking to the heirs right now because this is all about us and no one else at this point.
Islam.
Islam justice.
Yeah. I have a question. Since you mentioned in one of the other calls, a couple calls ago, that the treaty wasn't signed, what kind of implications are based on that? I mean, do we have anything to
can't a brother use the
to enforce?
Do we have anything to what?
If the treaty wasn't signed, what are we basing any of the contracts on? Enforcing the Constitution and treaty. What does that mean? Because you were saying that the treaty wasn't signed, and what does that mean for us?
Okay, so this is what that means. First of all, we needed to get our own land before we start trying to do anything with other nations. We needed to get our own land in order so that there's so that everyone is aware of land. We needed to put the subjects back in subject status because they had been acting in corporate status, and we don't, that's a no-no. That needed to take place first before we can treat with other nations, because in reality, our ancestors did a lot of work and a lot of treaties and things like that, but they are actually giving us a clean slate where the nations are concerned. We get a clean
Why
slate.
haven't you taken over first, y'all?
So, just one moment. We have a fresh, clean slate, okay? And so on that fresh, clean slate, that means that we're not going to be doing treaties with foreign, subjects. We're not going to do treaties with subjects. We do treaties with other nations. Okay? So we had to first take care of that. And I hesitate to say that it's kind of like a new nation being born, but we could kind of look at it when it comes to us, because we here present now in this dimension, not a single one of us has signed a treaty, as it were, with other nations. And we need to collectively do that. So this is going to be an exercise in collectively us coming together and doing the exercise of treaties and those things. Okay? That's what that means. We get to look at all of the treaties and determine how, first we look around and see what nations are there, that we're going to be treating with. And then what are we treating for? So all of the treaties that we've seen are examples of what we're going to be doing. So we can pull from them and begin to discuss them among ourselves and among the nation, and then determine, okay, is this what we want to do? How, we get to determine all of that. We have a clean slate. It's like a whole new world, and it's almost like we're starting from point A, and we get to determine and discuss and govern according to the examples that we see.
Islam?
Okay.
Islam?
Yeah. So, yes, Islam.
With regard to enforcement and obligations of the Constitution and the treaties, this unsigned treaty means that we don't have these obligations or these enforcements that can be brought because of the obligation of the treaty. If it wasn't.
Get over it, dude. This shit is all bullshit. Get over it, dude.
Hey, pink guy, I'm not talking to you.
No. Don't.
But anyway,
That's not, go ahead.
that's something that I'm just looking at in regard to that.
Well, we do have the obligations. We do have them, except that the obligations right now are a matter of universal understanding, okay? But
Why
we
haven't
still
you
have
taken
to
over
go through
First
the
Avenue, Polly?
exercise. We have to go through the exercise of knowing how to do treaties with one another and knowing how to use diplomatic means to get things done. All of this is here, just like our prophet said, to teach us how to govern. So don't feel like you're unprotected. We're definitely protected. Our ancestors have put some things in place. That's why we're here.
Your ancestors,
and that's why when we do speak, you can see that the changes have happened, but we still have to implement these things. We have to implement all of the things that we have been learning about. We're protected 100%. That's for sure. But we do have to, this is a learning exercise for us. Our ancestors put this whole thing in place so that we could learn how to govern. We have the protection of the whole earth, really. Okay? So all of those things that you're concerned about that you've seen in the past and those protections that you thought you had, you still have them. We can still quote them and we can still implement them. And here's the thing, Justice Jay, you're sovereign. And also you're part and parcel of the sovereign state. So at any time you can go in anywhere and quote the treaty and quote the Constitution. We just did it. And it stands as law. But us together as a nation and as the state, we're learning both how to implement those things in our best interest, and then we're going to be, the test is going to be as other nations come to us to be fair and to be impartial and to be noble in dealing with them.
So
this is a learning exercise. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, excuse me. Are we implementing the no-load treaty at this point? Because we redid the treaty here in Mecca, and
then that's the law. That is the law.
We signed it. You know, we did a correction, and it's just no-loading it and taking some of the other corporate stuff out. But yeah. So I understand.
Well, then that is the supreme law. That's the supreme law.
Yeah.
Are you there, Ability? Yes. Okay, good. That's the supreme law then. And here's the thing. The rest of us, when we see it, if we see it out there on the public record, especially and this is why we say we and all Moors in the things that we do. Because at any time, any Moor who quotes the treaty, whatever you put on the public record, that applies to them too. That's how this works. Because remember, Justice Jay, those different quote-unquote states, they had different things on the books, different stuff on the books. And whenever you came into one state, it was one thing, and you went someplace cross quote-unquote state lines, it was something else. But we don't have those boundaries. So at any time, I can take whatever you all put on the public record and say, this is the law for this for here too. And that's going to apply to everyone who agrees that applies to them. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So what you did was absolutely what should have been done. We put a version of the treaty out and actually took and gave it to the military. And we changed it to a peace treaty instead of a war treaty, because it's actually a war treaty, isn't it? It talks about war and about what to do in the event of war. And we changed all of that to peace and gave it to the military here. You know, so yes, absolutely. I encourage all Moors to do what you've done. Take the initiative to put the treaty out there in the proper red ink and all lowercase letters as it should be. Does that answer your question, Justice Jade?
Yeah, and I don't want to go too much off topic, but with the delirium that we're using, I you know, had some, I ain't gonna say trouble wrapping my mind around, you know, sending delirium out. I understand that, but I'll ask that question later because I got to put the question.
You can ask it now because it's probably a question that others have, and no question is off limits. We know that there's some programming in place, you know, where delirium is concerned and where anything other than that fiat for many on our land. We know that already. But we need to get it out there and talk about it and work our way through it.
Okay.
Because of what the law says.
Okay, well, you know, some time ago I had mentioned to you, because you mentioned that the other nations are going to start using the gold standard, and it comes through us, right? So
yes.
I was thinking that the Moors, you know, we have our own currency now, and I love it, but we could trade among ourselves. But I had heard about a rainbow currency that they were saying was ready to be used once they take the fiat out. And I was thinking, well, all these other countries have their own currencies, but they have to be gold backed. So since I think you were talking about, you know, having a meeting of the minds or a meeting or whatever with these other currencies and countries, wouldn't it be easy for us to put our you know, appellations on their money to monetize it, and, you know, let mankind use the currency, and we've got, you know, the moorishe currency, but to monetize them with the gold standard, couldn't we just sign and put on our, you know, lowercase red on the rainbow currency?
So here's how that works. The rainbow currency, and by rainbow, we also mean that the many nations of the earth have their own, they all have their own national currency. Justice Jay, it's what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm off, is what the question is geared towards getting trade started. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would think that, you know, they want to use the gold standard. The gold standard comes through the Moors.
Yes.
So it's more or less authorized with our appellation and thumbprint, and they have black signatures on the fiat. Couldn't we monetize them by putting our appellations in red on and use that to
we can listen. We were backing fiat, and it ain't worth nothing. But the only good thing that gave it its value is a contract, our autograph with it.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so I see what you're saying, and here is the clarification where the Moors have to be careful with that, and that's why we're stating the things we're stating right now. We have to state that the ink on whatever it is monochrome and not black. We have to state, and whatever it is that we're doing has to be stated by our sovereign affidavit. That's the issue. is that we have to put the law in place first in order for the law to be executed.
But isn't that a way
Okay.
to monetize them when we use our appellation rather than using black and monochrome? We could use our red appellation and monetize the planet, right?
Yes, we already did. We already did.
I mean,
We
on
already did.
or whatever currency they're trying to use in their particular countries.
So they have the countries that we're going to be doing business with are indigenous too. So they have the authority to monetize and go back their stuff too.
Absolutely.
As soon as they start doing, and that's where we have to come together. Okay? Because they're indigenous too. They are of the primogenitors. And now that we've done it and put it on the public record, that automatically goes all the way down the line and I don't mean down the line, it goes across laterally to them too. So just by virtue of us doing what we've done with the delarium, it automatically activated everything else for them. That's what they were waiting on. It's for us to do it ourselves first, and then it would activate it for them.
So that's like the 100th monkey thing, right? No, I'm just saying.
Yes, it's kind of like that. Yeah, it is like that actually. But one of us had to do it first, and it had to be us doing it first. Okay, so it's already done. They were just waiting for us to wake up, wipe our eyes, read, and put some things on the record. Statehood was a huge part of that, and we just did that a week ago. So now that we've done that, we can now start looking at exactly what you're talking about, except knowing that it's already done. So even when they come to the table, they're already coming to the table with gold-backed money of their own.
Yeah.
Okay. And any that don't have their own can use ours. That's what United States and United Nations is all about. And that's in red in all lowercase letters. Okay? That's what that's all about.
Okay.
Each nation should have their own national currency, and then we all have to come together and agree on which currency is going to be the Earth's reserve currency that everyone trades natural resources in. Right? Isn't that how that structure goes?
Yes.
So we and the nations are going to have to come together and determine, but we don't have to do anything other than stand up in order for their national status to be activated and their money to be activated. Okay? So, and when I say we don't have to do anything but standing up entails all that we've been doing and more. Does that answer the question a little bit better?
Yes, it does. It was just an idea that I was turning around in my head as far as the unification of the currencies under the gold standard and that sort of thing. Because, it's a huge thing, the money. So, if you go into use the gold standard and it has to come through the Moors, well, we can authorize their currency and get moving forward in the gold standard,
It's authorized. The minute we stated it on the public record and we agreed to it, then it was authorized. And when we speak, Justice Jay, it's for the whole earth. And when I say we, I mean all of us. They can hear on the public record that there's a vote that's been taken that says, okay, the gold standard is active for the Moors at America, so let's go at Morocco, so let's go. And then there are some things they have to do too, like printing their own money and that sort of thing. But it's already back. Ours is already back by gold, and so is theirs, simply because we said so. We said that on our land, the gold standard is active, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't they on our land?
Yes.
Even though they're not, they are seemingly another nation, they're still, aren't they on our land? Even over at the other Africa and Asia, because see, this is the uniting of Asia.
Yeah. Well, that's what everybody's been waiting for, right? The implementation of the gold standard, if you call it that.
Yes. Yes.
That was just my question.
So,
I didn't want to take up too much time.
That's a good question. That's a good question. When we speak here at North America, it is valid for everywhere, with those who agree, the indigenous nations who agree. And then if there's any conflict with regard to that, then we bring it into our court and we say, okay, what's the conflict? That's why they were waiting for us to get our court set up and announce the gold standard and print our own money and agree and announce statehood and do the things that were required together to do statehood. They were waiting for that. And now it's done. Yeah,
it was the thing to do. It was a thing to do. And I applaud that action. Absolutely.
Islam.
Applaud
yourself, you know.
Applaud myself.
You're a part of that.
But thank you.
Islam. Thank you for that, Justice Jade. You asked really good, in-depth questions, and usually a lot of others have the same questions. Are there any other questions or comments about that? And again, we've activated it for our whole land mass. For all who consent, or for all who not consent, but for all who agree. Islam, nobility.
Islam. I saw a video where policy enforcers took a Moorish child in a police car, and he went out, proclaimed who he was, struggled a little bit with the policy enforcers in terms of getting them to understand that he was not black, the child was not black. Then he said he was going to lien all of them. He got the license plate, subject dates, he got their names, and that jilted one of them to say, okay, come on, let's get out of here. So that brought me back to your lien video. I began to watch it to get a better understanding of that, and you said something about terminating safe harbor, Universal Commercial Code, to terminate, to release them. What did they fear when they said, come on, let's get out of here?
There is a spiritual component to what we're doing. Yes, there's a financial component. They don't care about that because, I can't say they don't care about it because they do, because they only have one chakra in this commercial. That's the courses. But there's a spiritual component to this, and I'll refer back to some of the other comments and questions that come up sometimes about enforcement. There's a spiritual component that says that when we speak and we're competent and we're peaceful, that the subjects must yield. We put something in them at creation that says when you hear a certain sound come from us, step aside, and if you don't step aside, there are consequences that you do not want to deal with. And though it's a spiritual thing. And they agreed to that. So And that spiritual thing, that spiritual energy piece, it will create fear in them to make them want to run. That same piece, if we're not being who we should be, in terms of if there's, you know, some energy that is malicious where we're concerned, we have to be careful too, because that component, you know, it's real. That's why we don't worry about, you know, quote unquote dirty Moors, and you know, we've heard people refer to Moors as some Moors as dirty Moors because of this, that, some things that they do. We don't worry about that just because of that component, because we know that our ancestors, we are who we are because we have something within us. Our godness will not let us do certain things, and that goes for the subjects too. When we make that God sound, when God speaks, and we're speaking the law, that's why we don't have to argue. And remember, everything that we've done it without picking up one weapon except the pen. Because there's a component that says when they are competent, move back. Step out of the way. And that's why when things happen, like even the couple of times that we went to the POW camp, we ultimately in our spirit, we weren't worried because we knew that there was something the ancestors wanted to show us so that we could become more competent. And that second time, we knew from start to finish, we knew. So, you know, there's a spiritual component that is very powerful, that is observed by all. Islam. That's a great question. What did they see? Our ancestors.
And one more thing, I don't know if it was technical, but your last video you did Wednesday, I couldn't make a comment. And I don't know, maybe it was just that video, but it wouldn't allow me to make a comment. I'm done.
I could not understand your question, but just as
I said the last video you did on the fiduciary, I couldn't comment on it down at the bottom. You know, I said grand rising to all humanity, and I was thinking maybe it was just technical for that video.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It might have been just technical because there are some other comments under there, and you know, maybe refresh the screen, and sometimes it will, you know, pick back up whatever it needs to pick up so that you can make the comment under there. I know that we are in a protective bubble, and I don't know what to call it, a dome, a protective, we have a protection at this point that's making it so that the things that we say, should it go out there, that it won't scare people. So many are not being exposed to what we are saying by virtue of the algorithm. And sometimes those algorithms can cut out. They will cut up a little bit. How do I know that? I just know. I know it. I know it because I've seen them. I've seen counts go up, and I've seen them take 20 off the top, you know, right then. As soon as something goes out, you know, the clicks will start clicking, and then they'll pull them down, and, you know, our ancestors know what they're doing, though, ultimately. So I don't worry about that, but hopefully your comments, you know, are being put under there properly, and those who are commenting, hopefully it's getting put under there. And then, you know, any comments that don't have anything to do with the law that come from like foreigners, I usually, if I see them, I'll remove them, because if it's not about the law, and if it's a baseless comment that doesn't have anything to do with anything, it's not going to help the new Moors, then sometimes I'll remove it. So.
Yeah, Islam. I report the comments myself under the videos, and I say that they're harassing and bullying, you know. So Islam.
Islam. Thank you, Nobility. Appreciate you. Are there any other questions or comments with regard to the fiduciary duty, or the treaties, or the money, our real money? I'm so glad about our money, because I see some things coming where we're going to definitely need it. And Moors, listen, even if you think that Delarium is not something you can use right now, print you off some and set it aside, because you never know when you might need it. Because I've seen people pulling that out and them saying, we don't take that. I've seen that and heard about it. So if there are no more questions or comments about specifically the fiduciary piece as well.
Islam?
Islam, Nobility.
Yeah, Israel Paretspe. I just wanted to go back.
Can you speak up just a little bit, Justice Yajirel? Can you speak up just a little bit?
I just wanted to go back to what you were talking about, monochrome, and just point out the fact that chroma is also related to sound. So when we talk about the tone, when we're talking about the tone of the speaker, you know, in the artificial jurisdiction, the colored jurisdiction, it's referred to as color, and in the sovereign jurisdiction, it's referred to as tone. And so, because we're dealing with the tone of the speaker, and that monochrome that you're talking about, that's what it is, chroma. Chroma is also sound, as in the chromatic music scale. I yield.
Yes, those who know music, that chromatic scale. Yes, we used to do the chromatic scale back in the day. That is correct. And chroma also refers to light. And
yes, it does.
Yeah.
And light, and as a matter of fact, light and sound related as electromagnetic energy.
Wow. Yes.
This really is a science, isn't it?
Yes. I'm so glad we get to name things, because we are naming it properly.
Exactly. I yield.
Yes. Thank you, Justice Israel. That's amazing. That's why it's important for us to speak and keep speaking and keep naming. And again, those who do not feel comfortable using monochrome ink, don't use it. If you don't feel like using it, if you're not ready, if you don't like it, everything I do is going to still be in red ink and all lowercase letters, with the exception of I am going to do one or two demonstrations coming up with the monochrome ink. And I'm going to specify that this is monochrome ink and put the definition there so that it's clear what they're looking at. So as we go along, the ancestors are giving us keys, and also the purpose of today, especially with regard to the monochrome ink, was to get rid of the big bully of black ink, because it seems like it felt like something that we might have had to be afraid of. And at one point I was afraid of black ink. to a degree, you know, only to a degree, because I know I can not use it and erase it and do all of that. But we created everything initially anyway. Everything came from us first. It started with us first. But we did not call it anything dead. It was living when we used it. And we want to keep that going, where we reclaim and name everything. Everything. I've heard some, when we first started talking about the red ink, I heard some, you know, they were saying that, you know, and you know, it's valid, it stuck with me. They were saying, well, you know, we don't have to do away with that because we came up, you know, everything came from us anyway. That's correct, but we must say it. We must speak it first. We must speak it properly and competently and name it, just like in the bibliothelial text, the anthropomorphic God created everything. Because remember the story in Genesis, Gene Isis, that at first the earth was without form and it was void. And the first thing that God said was, let there be light. That's a chroma word. So when you talk about monochrome ink, it was dark first. It was dark first, knowing that we're purposefully not using the word black because black means pale. It was dark first, without form and void. And then let there be light. And then God began to name things and call things forth. That's where we are. We are in the beginning. That's what this new age is. It's our time. We're in the beginning. And we get to call things what we want them to be. And when we call things what we want them to be, we're speaking life to that which is ours. We rose out of that supposed, presumed shallow grave, and then we started speaking life to everything around us. That's how this works. That's what we do. The systems are ours. So what do? We move the dead tombstone by way of lien and court action and termination of all presumed corporate contracts. And then what do? We speak life. Lazarus, come forth. And that's what we're doing with our resources and everything that we need. So, with that being said, if there is nothing further, we will meet again on Islam Empress.
Empress Light, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Empress Kenya Houston L. from the Florida Territory. I would just like to add and let everyone know and encourage everyone, even if you feel led to do something that you truly don't understand why you're being led to do it anyway, and then it'll all make sense. Because when I created the delirium, I didn't understand why I was being led to do so. When I did send it out to Empress Light and Giorama, but to make a long story short, it ended up being what we needed at the time. So I just wanted to let all the Moors know, if at any time you ever feel led to do something, don't shut it off. Listen to that inner voice. Do what it is that you're feeling led to do, and it will all make sense in the end.
Oh, Islam, Empress. That's beautiful. What she was saying, for those who may, it did sound a little low, Empress, but I could hear you. For what Empress Kenya was saying, that was Empress Kenya Houston L. from Florida Territory. She is the creator of the dollarium. And I've told this story before about how we came about the dollarium, where we were talking, when I say we as a nation and we on these in these general assemblies were talking about our own money, and the gold standard and all of that. We mentioned the gold standard and we proclaimed it a few years back, 2 years ago in 2019. And the ancestors were telling us to take certain steps and do certain things and put certain things on the public record. And we were doing those things. If you go back and look at the videos, we were announcing things and putting things on the public record. And to some, it looked like we were randomly announcing things, but we were not. If you look back, it's in order. It is in order according to the way the ancestors wanted it to be done. And then when we got to a certain point, I was thinking to the ancestors, I was talking to them one day about the money, and I was thinking, after all that, because I had a really, we had, from the time I woke up till now, I was hit the ground running. No breaks, no vacations, nothing, just hit the ground running. And at that time, I was saying, okay, now it's time for us to manifest our money, because I was getting downloads on what that was going to be like in terms of how do we distribute it? Do we go to a bank and ask them to print it? What do we do? You know, I was just kind of talking to the ancestors about that. And then we had a call on, I think it was maybe a Wednesday or something like, or maybe a Sunday. We had a call, and I don't remember exactly the date. And I mentioned on the call that we were going to have to produce our own money. But I was thinking, ancestors, you're telling me to say this. If I have to design it, I'll design it. But so then I had even talked to our judiciary about it, because Justice Abasi had two designs that he had brought forth, but we weren't sure who the artist of those figures that were on there. We were not sure who the artists were of them. And so we kind of, the ancestors said, just hold off on a minute. Well, that same week, when we mentioned that we're going to have our own money, we got to have our own money, about 2 days after that call, Empress Kenya, it seemed like it was out of the clear blue sky, but she was absolutely listening to the ancestral energies. When she sent me an email with all the dollarium in it already designed and everything, I was blown away and floored, because I was like, how did you know? She had it all done, and that's how the ancestors work. So what she was saying just now is, even if you don't quite understand, but you're being led to do something, go ahead and do it, and then the ancestors will make it make sense. Because she apparently she didn't know 100% why she was being led to do it, but that took about 1,000 pounds of weight off of my shoulders, and it wasn't really that much weight, but it felt like it, And when I say it wasn't that much weight, the ancestors will never put anything on us that we cannot endure. And I was just in tears when I saw the email, because it was just so beautiful, the work that she did. She designed that herself right there on her computer. It was just beautiful. So we began to collaborate after that, and Empress Kenya's talent, she's just brilliant. She's brilliant. And that's where the dollarium came from. So we did a few updates and changes and collaborations back and forth, and then we released it to everyone. It's amazing, because her timing was perfect, and it was really her timing, our timing, and the ancestral timing all working together. And when I say our, I mean everyone on this call, everyone who hears this, everyone, all the Moors who don't, even the Moors who don't hear this. It was us all thinking the same thing together, the collective consciousness of the nation. And it manifested just that quickly, and it meant that I didn't have to spend hours and hours and days and days and days trying to get it done, and then trying to answer emails and do, you know, sharing information and court actions. And it just took it was beautiful. So when we work together like that, we're unstoppable. We can't, Islam is
Every. Thank you, Empress.
Yes, in Virginia. So appreciative of the work. And, you know, everything that the ancestors have been, because some of the things that we proclaimed, you know, we couldn't see at the time how it was going to, we couldn't see the A, B, C, D, E, F, G of it, but we know what we know about us, and we know what the ancestors tell us, and we know that what the law says. And when those things add up, it must manifest. Whatever it is, it must manifest. It has to. And so far, so good. It has done it. The ancestors have done everything that they promised they would do. And for that, we are so grateful. So, yes, if the ancestors are telling you to do something, or you're feeling that divine urge, go ahead and do it. And, you know, they will tell you why, because all of the things that they had us doing, that came from within us, were already in order. They seemed random, but they were not random. When you look back at everything that's been done, it was laying the foundation for statehood the whole time. Even when the ancestors said, okay, the language has to be different. The language, the spelling, the way you cast your spells has to be different. Okay, ancestors, let's go with that, because it makes sense. It made sense jurisdictionally. And now everything that has to do with jurisdiction makes sense, that we have our own everything. It all made sense, and the ancestors had everything to add up the way that it should add up. Just very beautiful the way they do what they do. And they do it in all of us, all at the same time. That's the part that I love about this. With that being said, are there any other questions, comments, wisdom, etc.? Okay, Islam. With that being said, we will meet back here on Sunday at 6. Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs.
Peace and grand rising.
Grand rising.
Peace and grand rising.
Much love, much love.
Islam.
Grand rising.
And grand rising.
Islam.
Grand rising. Peace and love.
Islam.
Not today.